Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Journey to Legacy podcast. Thanks for being here. If you all didn't know, I record these introductions as well as the outros of the episode right after each interview. And so I think my tone and emotions, energy levels can say a lot about what you're about to experience in this interview. Today, Miss Kimberly Jarman teaches us about mindset and is actually all neuroscience based. This is a super educational episode, super educational. She breaks things down on a scientific basis, but that you can understand. I personally try and rephrase everything to keep it as simple as possible. But wow, she's going to tell you about neurohacking from things like what foods and supplements you're eating. We talk about how the counseling and the therapy industry is pretty broken. There's a society problem happening. But what we can do, instead of just using the normal route of go to therapy, talk about it, to what we can actually take action on to change our lives. You're going to hear this statement multiple times throughout the interview. I'm going to say it to you one more time here. A big key lesson is that our thoughts and our beliefs create our emotions. Our emotions drive our actions, and our actions create the results in our life. So I hope this episode is going to help you to change your thoughts a little bit, which will eventually lead to the actions to change your life. Hope you enjoyed the interview. Kimberly, thanks for being here.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Wayne.
It's my pleasure. I like to give everybody a chance. Just tell the audience about yourself in your own words for us.
Okay. I'm a mental performance coach for women. I help them essentially reach their full potential, and I do it through neuroscience-based mindset work and neurohacking. So we get in, we test the neurotransmitters, the hormones, and then we balance them out through food and supplements to help them reach their full potential. And why do I want them to reach their full potential? So then they can go after their dreams and create impact in this world, to become change makers, legacy makers.
Become change makers, legacy makers. I love this neuroscience-based piece. I don't think I've ever spoken with a coach, somebody specifically around mindset, that is such a focus on neuroscience or neurohacking is what you mentioned. Can you sort of just define that a little bit more? What exactly does that even mean?
Yeah, so neurohacking, is that what you want me to define a little bit more?
Yeah, sure.
So our thoughts create our emotions, and our emotions drive our actions, and our actions create the results in our life, right? And thoughts come from like high level, two different areas of our brain, our prefrontal cortex and our primal brain. And we want to be functioning out of that prefrontal cortex. That's where it's like planning and dreaming and thinking come from, right? Well, if we are not neurochemically balanced, it's harder to access that higher level thinking. And if we're not neurochemically balanced, it's also very hard to access the emotional states that we need to have to reach our full potential. So I'll just kind of get a little bit granular on that. Like our neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, just normal common ones that we've heard of, right? They are also interrelated with hormones, your progesterone, testosterone, estrogen, and cortisol. And most of us are chronically stressed. So we have a high demand for cortisol. Well, the body is going to prioritize cortisol production and downregulate production of other like serotonin or dopamine, right? So then it's impacting how we think. It's impacting how we feel. So I want to be able to go in, test, see where you're at in those areas. The body's always trying to move to a place of healing. So at that point, my business partner is a physician, a naturopathic physician specifically. We've tested, we look at it. Okay, here's what food and supplements, micronutrients you need to give your body to be able to start balancing these things out.
Nice. Okay, so we're talking actually about the chemical balance in your brain and actually being able to understand person to person through different tests that you all are doing, where is imbalance happening. And if I heard correctly, it sounds like due to chronic stress, our bodies and our brains are producing more cortisol. Is that what you said?
Yeah, right. Because stress is like a demand, it's a threat. Stress is like our brain and body are perceiving threats. So then
Correct.
threats, we need to escape, run away for survival.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
then our body goes to the sympathetic nervous system, which then is like cortisol and adrenaline, norepinephrine and epinephrine. Well, those
Nice.
like that becomes priority and everything else becomes secondary. So I love when I'm talking to people about this, like, oh, chemically balanced, like I'm fine. That's for the people that are mentally ill. It's like, well, are you stressed? Because if you're stressed, you're
Yeah.
probably not chemically balanced.
Yeah, and we all are. I mean, of course, if we're talking about chronically stressed, what I'd love for you to sort of define and talk about here also, right? That's a little bit of a different scenario, I suppose, but like everybody's stressed. And so just make sure I'm hearing you correctly. So because of stress, more cortisol release, right? Sort of anti-stress, not necessarily fight or flight, but that's taking away from our body's ability to produce things like serotonin, which is in that prefrontal cortex, which is more things like problem solving, imagination, future thinking. Am I along the right path?
Yeah, I want to kind of like back a path up a little bit.
Perfect.
So serotonin, like 95% of it is produced in our gut, right?
Interesting.
So it's like all over. But when we talk about accessing our prefrontal cortex, we're talking more about the nervous system. Because when we're stressed, again, threat, we're living in our sympathetic nervous system, which is fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And that's coming out of the limbic system in the brain. It's that kind of primal brain, right? Which
Okay.
then will shunt blood to the prefrontal cortex. So then we're not fully accessing it. So it's this interplay between chemicals and then nervous system regulation too. But when we're chronically stressed, we are dysregulated and we're demanding high doses of cortisol and adrenaline. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. Hopefully, all the listeners are following. That's why I'm sort of trying to
Yeah.
repeat it back, make sure I'm hearing you. Overarching, right? Stress, everything in our life is taking away from our body being able to produce more of the chemicals that are beneficial to us,
Yeah. To
right?
move forward in our life, right? To achieve our goals, to problem solve, think critically.
Wow. Wow, that's crazy. In the pre-show interview or in a questionnaire, you mentioned that for a long time you had sort of a fixed and a victim mindset. Do you attribute a lot of that to chronic stress that was going on, taking away a lot of this, or creating a chemical imbalance? Actually,
That's a good question. Um, so I live here in the US and I think it's a societal thing. Like,
I
I don't know if you've ever read Dr. Carol Dweck's book, Mindset, The New Psychology of Success.
don't think so. But
It's
okay,
fantastic. So she talks about growth
wonderful.
mindset versus fixed mindset. I am from the southern part of the United States, so there's a lot of poverty,
Mhm.
right? And I think it's like in where I grew up, like victim mindset is just like it's the mindset that's taught within family systems and school systems and religious systems, right? So I feel like I was kind of probably born into thinking more like a victim, and
Mhm.
that people that are successful or like Michael Jordan's are born talented and gifted. You're either born
Mhm.
it or you're not, and it can't
Mhm.
be something that's developed.
Mhm.
And
And
you know,
so,
go ahead.
no, sorry, I'm just hearing you correctly. Are you saying that you believe that you are either born it or you're not?
That's what fixed mindset says.
Okay,
And then
gotcha,
growth
gotcha.
mindset says like it's a skill set that you just develop.
Wonderful. Okay, cool. We're on the same page. Yeah. So it's interesting. So you're saying that you were, in the South, right? Lower income sort of area, if you will, born into a family that sort of caused this fixed mindset.
Mhm.
So let's sort of progress a little bit along your journey here, just because I like how you took us back. I know that you went to college, you got a master's degree as well. In my mind, that's not a very fixed mindset thing to do. How'd that happen?
Um, so I knew, well, my choice when I knew I didn't want to go do manual labor. So when I graduated high school, I was like, I am not doing manual labor. So my choice was to go to college. So I went to college And my bachelor's degree is in counseling because I wanted to help people, which I was really wanting to help myself, because at that point, like, I'm a human. And as a human, you're probably going to have some big T trauma and you're going to have some little T trauma. Not everyone, but most, right? And I had trauma and I wanted to help people. And that sounded like the smartest route. And you can't do anything with it for the bachelor's degree. You have to go get a master's degree to be able to do anything with it. So I went and got my master's in counseling. So it kind of it was a fixed mindset in the sense of like, I wasn't able to see that I could be capable of anything else. I just knew I had to go to school, get a profession, and go get a full-time job.
Mm-hmm. And so, when I think about, I talked to a lot of people about this. When I think about my schooling, I think I'm fortunate that we went to a pretty great school system in a, upper middle class area. We still were never taught any ideas of entrepreneurship or ideas of really our full potential. I think earlier you said also there's like a lot of societal problems going on. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, my dad was an entrepreneur. He's a truck driver, right? He has his own sand and gravel business. My mom stayed at home, did the books. But there was never a discussion of like, you could have your own business. It was like, either go marry a rich dude or like become a secretary.
Hmm. Wow. How come? Like, what's going on with that? Like, why are we being taught that way? Why are we missing this huge opportunity?
Um, Man, that's a great question. I think because a lot of people have like fixed mindsets. They don't believe it's capable for them, right? Or there's like these old school that women belong in certain places,
Sure,
not business owners,
sure,
right?
sure.
So like my school counselors never talked about that either, right?
Mm,
And I don't think they believed it was capable for them to go have their own business or do their own thing. So it's like, no, you just follow this path. You go to school, you go to
sure,
college, you become an employee. I mean, if you look at the school system, I don't know, in the US, it was built on creating employees.
sure. Yeah, absolutely. I love how you put there that it's possibly because everybody has a fixed mindset. Obviously, not everybody, but a lot of these people are teaching from a fixed mindset themselves. So it's nearly impossible for them to teach to others to have a growth mindset that they could achieve more than what that person is achieving themselves.
Yeah.
And thus, you went to the route of school system, college to become an employee, right? What happened next? I mean, somewhere there was a shift that happened pretty heavily.
Um, I'm not a good employee. I like all my coworkers and my boss were like, you do not play well in the sandbox. Um,
What a big compliment.
Yeah. I mean, I was fine with it. I was like, yeah, it's my sandbox and you don't know what you're doing. So,
Honestly, yeah, it's great.
yeah. So there, I was unhappy being an employee, right? But I didn't have the self-confidence or the belief in myself to see yet otherwise.
Mm,
And I was in a toxic marriage and I was going through therapy. Like I mean, my master's is in counseling, right? That's what you're supposed to do,
sure,
right? So
sure.
I was like going from therapist to therapist, and like I really just wasn't getting any better. I was staying depressed, and I was in
Mm.
this toxic marriage, and then we lost everything in a flood. And
Oh,
that really
wow.
was like the straw that broke the camel's back for me, is because whatever coping mechanisms I had at the time, I couldn't use anymore in that situation. And so I started spinning later to come out and find out like in PTSD. So I was spinning in PTSD, trying to like just basically survive. Um, Separated from my husband because I was so just like I was self-sabotaging, right? I just didn't have the bandwidth to
Sure.
function normally. I was struggling with PTSD, separated from my husband, self-medicating. I end up in the psych hospital for suicide. And when I get out, I realize like no one's coming. I wasn't as depressed as I thought I was being in there, be with those people. Two, no one's coming to save me. No peace, no person, no God, no one. Like it's on me to create a different
Kimberly,
life.
if I can pause you there, this is a pretty wild story in my mind. The biggest piece that I'm busy thinking about here is that you have a master's in counseling. You were taught traditional schooling, and I guess it's still considered traditional schooling, even higher education, right? Counseling, how to deal with these things. You went through many therapists. You told me 8 therapists. Something's broken. What is broken? What is going wrong here in this system?
Yeah, this is my opinion. There's probably gonna be people that disagree with me, but I can only talk about my lived experience,
Of
right?
course.
From my perspective, it's broken because like I would show up for therapy and like let's talk about my past trauma. Let's talk about like my sexual trauma from high school, right? So I'm talking about this past trauma. I get validated in therapy. Yeah, bad, horrible, whatever. Like, there's the validation. I feel heard and seen, but that's it.
Mm,
Like I walk out of the session and now I understand. I walk out of the session and I'm still cycling the same shitty thought loops that
mm,
are creating, right? Our thoughts create our emotions drive our action creates the results in our life. So no one gave me the tools like to tell me like, oh, by the way, like, yeah, let's process this past trauma, but I'm going to give you the tools to understand like your thoughts aren't necessarily real. Most of them are stories, Kim, and they're creating emotions because I was still under the impression like all these other humans were creating my emotions, right? So I just got
mm,
to try to control the humans so I can feel better. So
mm,
you either have that perspective, you're just like kind of stuck talking about the past and not getting any tools to help you manage your mind here, or they choose to med you up. And the
yeah.
more I learn about SSRIs, like it's not that helpful. Like most of like 50% of them are not even effective. Um,
SSRIs are medication.
serotonin, selective serotonin reuptake. So they give it to people with depression, anxiety,
Okay, I'm with you.
right? So you med me up. So now I'm kind of like numb. I'm talked about the past, but again, I'm still stuck in the same shitty thought loops. I have no mindset tools to understand like how to manage my mind, how to process my emotions.
Mm,
Right. And so
mm,
like it wasn't effective. Like I had no tools to like, well, how do I deal with here and now? How do I deal with this? Like, great, we talked about my
sure.
past, but like, what about right now?
Yeah, like you said, because it was your thoughts. Your thoughts get spiraling afterwards. And I love this so much. I wrote down this quote that you've now said 2 times. I wrote it down before the interview so that I could repeat it, and I just love it. That our beliefs or our thoughts create our emotions drive our actions, and our actions create the results in our life. Unbelievable, right? And so in therapy, you were expressing yourself, you were heard, you were seen, but it wasn't changing your thoughts. Said, I actually had this conversation with a close friend of mine a couple of weeks ago that therapy also seemingly it's broken because I'm tired of just talking about my problems, but I need actions to be able to take. So you mentioned after therapy, you guys lost everything. You ended up in a psych hospital. And right before that, you said that the ways that you had learned to deal with it were failing you,
Yeah.
right? And so talk to me a little bit about that, about either what were some of these old ways, or what I'm mostly just curious about is therapy's broken. We're just talking about it, but what are like the ways actually to deal with these thoughts that will then thus change our emotions, our actions, and our future?
Okay. So I hear two questions. One question is like, what was your coping mechanisms that didn't work? And
Yep.
then I heard another question that was like, okay, what are things that actually do work? Am I understanding?
Please. You nailed it.
Okay. All right. Again, my personal experience. For me, as a teenager, I had already had trauma, right? And like therapy wasn't accessible for me where I live. But religion was. And it was a great place for me. Like Christianity, like as a teenager, like provided a place for me to feel loved and accepted. But it was also, and I didn't know this at the time, it was a way for me to spiritually bypass my trauma.
Also,
God's going to take care of this. God's going to heal it. Right.
gotcha.
So I would bypass that trauma with religion. And so when the flood happened and I'm the one walking, which is kind of ironic in this moment that I'm talking about the flood and religion, as I'm walking in this hip deep water,
Mm,
animals floating around me, I had this religion like, God is not here. It is me walking in this water. And so I walked away from my religion at that point. Well, that was the only coping mechanism that kind of helped me stay and like things can change. There's hope, right? Well, when you let go of that, that person's God's not going to come rescue you. I just tell Spun and like, no one, like, there is no hope. Nothing is going to change. This is all just going to be hard and heavy.
Wow. Yeah. That moment you lost at that. Yeah. You didn't need to have anything, right? Because, I'm a very religious person, right? Christian. But what you're saying as far as you were taught hope and belief, which is great, but your day-to-day actions, you were never taught something there other than just to believe it will all be taken care of. It will all get better.
Yeah.
Please continue.
Yeah. So it was like I was in that powerless state, or like I had no control over my life, my future, right? It was, yeah. So now from my perspective, it was like being coached a lot and digging into the neuroscience, right? And like, how do we change this? I think we have to understand the human brain. And that's why I like neuroscience-based mindset. It's like the human brain is wired for survival. And it's like the primal brain has a motivational triad. And I learned this from Brooke Castillo, so I'm not going to claim her work. The motivational triad is to seek pleasure, avoid pain and suffering, and utilize as little energy as possible.
Like seek pleasure, avoid pain and suffering.
Yeah.
Energy.
Yeah. So that's how we have stayed alive for however many years humans have been in existence, right? It's kind of by that motivational triad. Well, we don't live in a society where tribes are like attacking me or saber-toothed lions are trying to eat me, right? Like we all live in a pretty safe environment. We have homes, food, water pretty regularly. Not all of us, but most of us do, right? So that part of my brain, it's still there. It still exists, that cave woman type brain, but it sometimes gets in my way here in my in the civilization I live in. And then we have to understand we have this prefrontal cortex, this younger part of our brain that's about planning and like dreams and stuff, right? And we have 10 to 60,000 thoughts a day.
Yeah.
Okay. Most of those thoughts are our brain trying to make predictions, trying to pull from past evidence and make predictions about the safety of our future. So it has a lot of stories. It's filling in the gaps a lot and making assumptions. So a lot of my thoughts are these stories, right? So when I teach my clients, like, is this thought a fact or a story? And how do we measure if it's a fact? A fact is provable in a court of law, or all 8 billion people will agree upon it. And if you can't prove it in a court of law, then it's not a fact. It's subjective interpretation of reality. So then you get to decide, does this thought serve me or does it not serve me? If it's just a story, does it serve me or not serve me?
I think that's a great way to look at things. As far as, first off, I love everything that's so science-based here is amazing. So much stuff in the coaching, in the mindset space, people don't talk about the science, right? They talk more, if I could say, sort of the counseling traditional route of thoughts and feelings being heard and understood, but not like the science stuff. And so you're talking about the triad of, I don't know, what's the actual, what triad is it called?
The motivational triad.
The motivational triad is very interesting, right? Like I said, we're created to survive. But in today's day and age, it's very different how we live. And our thoughts, so many of them are mostly made up stories. We're filling in those gaps. And so by sort of dissecting our thoughts and thinking about, can this thought be measured? Can it be proven? If yes, great. If no, well, it's made up. Is this serving me at all?
Yeah.
I mean, it makes so much sense to me. It makes so much sense to me. I think about this all the time, right? If somebody comes to me with a problem or a situation, I just say, well, is that true? Do we know this for fact? No? Then let it go. But it's much easier said than done, right? Even the piece of realizing our own thoughts is so much easier said than done. Where does someone even start to really be able to think this way in their day to day?
I think just the awareness they're getting right now.
Mm.
Right? Like just the awareness, like, oh, all my thoughts aren't all true, and they're coming from two different parts of my brain. And there's like this part of my brain that's wired for survival. And it just like, when we say wired for survival, like it doesn't want us to change. You are currently surviving, Wayne, right here, right now. Again, motivational triad, use as little energy as possible. It takes a lot of energy to change. So your brain is like, no, let's not change. Let's just live the same way, same day. I don't care if you're happy. I don't care if you're not happy. I don't care if you reach your full potential. Do not care. I care that you survive. And you're currently surviving, so we do not want to change. Right. And so we just like understand, like, okay, yeah, my brain's going to want to not do those things. And then understanding that like emotions, right? Our thoughts create our emotion. There's a thought, neurotransmitters fire, which creates a chemical reaction, which is an emotion. Dr. Taylor from Harvard University, she's a brain scientist there, did a research study and showed that that chemical reaction I'm talking about, that energy, will last in our body for 90 seconds if you will acknowledge it and be aware of it. But most of us don't do that. We don't want to feel shame. We don't want to feel embarrassment. We don't want to feel uncomfortable. So we ignore it. We push it down. Like we try to distract and like go play Netflix so I can feel a different emotion, go eat so I can go feel a different emotion, whatever, sex, food, alcohol, whatever you do to like distract to feel a different emotion. Most of us do that. So then that emotion, it's energy, is then stored in the body. And like, and we keep playing that story. So we keep creating it. So it just hangs around longer and longer and longer.
Wow. I mean, you're bringing so much, like, oh, you said awareness to this right now. The piece that, like, I had never heard somebody say that before as one of the three pieces of the emotional triad, right, is preserving our energy. And it's way easier. It takes way less energy just to say the same, to not deal with things. That's super interesting to me. I never heard it before. I urge everybody also, I'm going to go re-listen to this episode. I'm going to rewind 2 minutes from this point, rewind back, because you just talked like unbelievable. Like I'm just going to go listen to it again afterwards. Kimberly, let's jump to something slightly different here real quick in our last few minutes. Let's talk about entrepreneurship, right? Because I know that after this, you lost everything, psych hospital, you decided it's all up to myself. That's when you hopped into entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah.
You made a big pivot in your life. It wasn't as easy as you maybe thought it was going to be, was it? Tell us what happened.
You know, one coach told me one time later on after my first entrepreneurial adventure, she was like, look, when you become an entrepreneur, you're signing up for a lifetime self-development course.
Nice.
So, right. So yeah, I took responsibility for my life. And I had a dream for a long time that I wanted to own a CrossFit gym. I was a CrossFit athlete. I was already a CrossFit coach. Like that was the ultimate dream. And I had one person in my life that was an entrepreneur. It was a woman. And she looked at me and was like, I really think you could be a business owner. And because she had that much belief in me, I could pull from that belief and be like, okay, maybe I can do this. And so I went to my CrossFit gym owner that I was working at. I was like, I got money. I'll buy out half of your business. And he was like, this should have been my first red flag, but I was naive. He was like, I'll sell you the gym. I was like,
oh, the whole thing.
Okay.
Oh.
And somebody told me to look at the books. So like I get the books. I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm like, great, there's numbers written down. Okay, this looks good.
Yeah, there you go. Right. You weren't taught finance. You weren't taught business. No.
I see some numbers. Okay, fine. Sure. So I bought the CrossFit gym and I am a great CrossFit coach. But man, the business side, the like marketing, right? Selling was so uncomfortable. But what was really hard is when people would quit, I took it so personally and I didn't have rejection resilience at that point. So it was devastating. I felt like literally somebody was breaking up with me every time somebody left. And it just, it made it so miserable. It ruined it for me. I hated it. I was breaking even. I was doing all this work. I was working all these hours to break even and then feel like I was getting broken up with. And I was just like, I can't do this. So after 2 years, I sold it.
Wow.
Oh.
I think that's just so relatable to so many people. And I love it because let's keep going here forward because you're going to pivot and you're going to keep moving forward, right? You jumped in, you tried, you realized this is tough. And if I dare say so, you failed. So you sold the business. What happened next?
So I sold the business. I have to tell you, my soul does a really good job of like burning bridges for me. So how I got out of higher ed is I had a toxic boss. And I looked over at my only other coworker and I was like, you should just quit. And he started packing his box up at 9:30 in the morning. And I was like,
Oh, wow.
oh God, he's leaving. Like, I can't stay here. So I packed mine up and I typed our letters of resignation up and I took them to HR and then we drove off at 10 a.m. So I couldn't, like, you can't really go back to higher ed if you quit like that. So
Sure.
after I sold the gym, I was like, well, I can't go back to higher ed.
Wow. Okay.
And this didn't work out. So what am I going to do? And
Yeah.
I'm so tired of living paycheck to paycheck. So I was reading a book and she was saying, like, if you want to be successful, you got to get a coach. And I never heard of a coach. I was like, okay. So I Googled it. I found Brooke Castillo, the life coach school, listened to a couple podcasts, was all in. That's where I learned the model at, that your thoughts create your emotions, drive your actions, create the results in your life. And I had never heard of that. Nowhere in the therapy world, nowhere did I hear that. And I was like, what? Like, my thoughts are creating my emotions?
Mm-hmm.
What? And so I studied underneath her for 2 years and then I launched my coaching business because, like, this is what I want to do. This work matters and this has changed my life. Right. So,
Kimberly, it's so amazing to hear. I find myself using the word amazing way too much. But you are changing so many lives. Like I said, it's changed your life. Now you're changing others' lives. And I just want to commend you halfway for burning that bridge in higher education because you didn't give up, right? We go through failures in our lives, we go through obstacles, and too many people will give up, right? Yet you decided, whether it was purposeful in the start or chance that you heard this podcast, you decided, what's coaching? Let me go learn about what that is, and then actually move forward with getting one and learning. And it's changed your entire life, and now it's changing other people's lives also, right? We're quickly winding down here. What's a piece of advice you could maybe give to someone that's at that crossroads of, do I give up and go back to what I used to do, what I'm comfortable with, or do I keep moving forwards?
so glad that I get to say this. I had a dear friend and his name was Pavel, and I don't know where he's at now in the world, but he told me in my journey, Kim, the next 9 years of your life are going to look just like the last 9 years of your life. And that was life changing. So that's what I would offer. Like, if you want to give up and go back, the next 9 years of your life are going to look just like the last 9 years. But if you want a different 9 years, you keep showing up, you keep making decisions, and you keep taking action. And that's what changes. That's where you get to have a different 9 years.
What a powerful statement. What a powerful thought for everybody to be able to contemplate. And it's very actionable, simple for them to think about. So, Kimberly, thank you so much for being here. The last question I always like to ask everybody is about the theme of the show, and that's legacy. And so, for you personally, what is the legacy that you're looking to leave on this world?
Yeah, I want to be part of the group that changes how mental health is done. Right? Like, we went from 22 veteran suicides a day 3 years ago to 31 a day. The system's broken and it's not working. And when we can start looking at, like, empowering people to manage their mind and helping them balance out their chemicals, that's how we change mental health. And I want to be a part of that change.
To everybody out there listening, thank you for being here today. What an amazing interview. Miss Kimberly Jarman Coaching. Everybody go check her out, right? She does specifically performance coaching for women, but unbelievable, right? I love that science-based things, learning about the triad there in our brain. So makes so much sense, right? And so many actual measurable things that we can do, that we can take action on in this episode. I highly appreciate you all for being here. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Please remember to subscribe, share this episode with a friend, a family member, a coworker, whoever you think is going to take some inspiration, some meaning out of this episode. And if you all are listening, I do urge you as well to come join and check out the Journey to Legacy community. If you are looking to increase your confidence, if you're looking to figure out your purpose in this life and actually leave an impact, leave your own legacy, come check out the Journey to Legacy community. Find us at journeytolegacy.org. We're a community of like-minded people working to grow ourselves, working to grow each other, and to leave lasting impact on this world. Thank you all again for being here. My name is Wayne Veldsman. You've been listening to the Journey to Legacy podcast.